story begins with the James Webb Space Telescope, a remarkable instrument designed to see the invisible, picking up an anomaly in a region assumed to be empty, cold, and silent. What it found was not silence, but a signal, faint, irregular, and persistent. At first, it seemed like thermal noise or a glitch, but as analysts delved deeper, they discovered a pattern that was not random. It was pulsing, rhythmic, and deliberate, echoing from the farthest corner of our solar system. The source of this signal was a newly detected object, catalogued as 3I Atlas, hurtling toward our sun from interstellar space. This name now sends chills down the spine of every astronomer who has studied it. 3I Atlas is not like anything we've seen before. It doesn't behave like a comet, an asteroid, or even a fragment. It follows rules we don't understand. When 3I Atlas was first spotted, scientists assumed it was a comet, but soon the comparisons broke down. Unlike any known comet, 3I Atlas showed no visible tail, despite moving closer to the sun. Its brightness didn't fluctuate as it should. It didn't release water vapor or dust, and the composition of its coma, what little there was unlike anything ever catalogued before. In fact, when Webb locked onto it, scientists were stunned to see only carbon dioxide coming off the surface. No hydrogen, no carbon monoxide, no signs of ice sublimation, just CO2, a single element, concentrated, refined, as if designed. The shape of 3I Atlas was even more intriguing. Unlike the chaotic structure of icy bodies, the surface of 3I Atlas appeared smooth, angular, and disturbingly uniform. Some infrared readings even suggested reflective surfaces, something not naturally occurring at that scale. To make matters worse, the object's albedo, its reflectivity, was too high for space rock, bordering on metallic. It was as if the object wasn't built to emit, but to reflect something. The closer 3I Atlas got to the inner solar system, the less it behaved like an object, and the more it behaved like a probe. If the chemistry was baffling, the size was outright alarming. Most interstellar objects we've observed have been relatively small, mere specks in the endless dark. But 3I Atlas, based on James Webb's thermal readings and triangulated data from the Spherix Observatory, could be as wide as 46 kilometers, larger than some moons, and not just larger, but denser. The object's trajectory remains unusually stable, resisting solar radiation pressure, solar wind, and gravitational perturbations from planets it passes. In other words, it behaves like it's controlled, but who or what is controlling it? No known natural object of that size, composition, and behavior has ever been detected in interstellar space, and yet here it is, gliding through our system with an eerie precision. Then came the light, a steady rotating emission that Webb first picked up as background noise, until spectral analysis revealed something horrifying. The light wasn't being reflected, it was being emitted, not from thermal radiation, but from a narrow band spectrum. In short, it was broadcasting, but not in the way stars broadcast radio waves or gamma bursts. This was modulated light, changing in a loop at regular intervals, almost like a lighthouse, but in space. Cryptographers were brought in, but they went silent. The signal wasn't complex, but it was intentional. Every 37 hours the pulse repeated, not identically, but with a pattern shift that some described as evolutionary. Each pulse was slightly more complex than the last, as if it were learning. The terrifying question now wasn't whether we were being observed, but whether we were being understood. And the more the signal was observed, the more it began to resonate with frequencies uncomfortably close to those used in brainwave stimulation, particularly in deep meditation and REM sleep. Could this object be trying to interface with the minds observing it? If so, then perhaps Webb didn't just detect a signal. It triggered a conversation. Just days after the Webb leak, biologists around the world started reporting anomalies. Certain deep ocean bioluminescent species began flashing in rhythmic pulses. Pulses that, when measured, matched the light interval of 3I Atlas's emission. In the Arctic, migratory birds began veering off course following a strange magnetic path that didn't align with the Earth's field, but rather pointed toward the object's trajectory. Even in human behavior, some regions reported increased instances of vivid dreams, similar dreams across cultures of a vast glowing spiral approaching Earth. These aren't coincidences, these are responses. Life itself, in its most primal forms, is reacting to something ancient, or maybe futuristic. Something that doesn't need to speak our language because it speaks the language of biology, magnetism, rhythm, and resonance. What if 3I Atlas isn't trying to communicate? Because it already has. It was supposed to be a routine press briefing. NASA's communications team had scheduled a quiet update on interstellar objects and infrared observations from the James Webb Telescope. But just hours before the live stream, all mention of 3I Atlas was scrubbed from the agenda, not postponed, not rescheduled, erased. Internal documents leaked by anonymous engineers revealed a troubling pattern. Every server holding raw data from the Atlas scans experienced sudden security protocol escalations, level 9 encryption, typically reserved for nuclear threat scenarios and planetary defense exercises. Even cloud-based backups held by the European Space Agency were remotely locked. Webb's data, which had previously been available to the scientific community with only minor delay, now required classified clearance. When journalists reached out for clarification, they received automated responses citing data integrity checks. But among astrophysicists, the silence was deafening. Forums went quiet. Slack groups dissolved. Private Discord servers disappeared. It was no longer just about the object. It was about what had just been discovered inside the data, something no one was ready to publish, something that made NASA, ESA, and even China's CNSA go into total containment mode. Then came the whisper from a Cambridge researcher. It's not what the object is, it's what it knows. Roughly 72 hours after James Webb's last confirmed scan of 3I Atlas, anomalies began to ripple across Earth's magnetosphere. At first, they appeared as minor deviations, magnetic readings in South America slightly misaligned, auroras in mid-latitudes occurring without solar activity. But then the North Magnetic Pole began accelerating and changing direction, not by kilometers per year, by kilometers per day. Aircraft navigation systems in remote regions had to be recalibrated. Submarine fleets, both military and scientific, reported system errors when attempting to establish orientation using the Earth's core field. What was causing this sudden global magnetic drift? The sun was calm, solar wind was low, there were no recorded CMEs, yet Earth was reacting, as if something massive, something not gravitational but resonant, was affecting the magnetic lattice of our planet. And when supercomputers at the European Geomagnetic Centre ran reverse trajectories based on the disturbances, the vectors all converged on a single line, a path, a line of influence originating from the exact current position of 3I Atlas. The implications were terrifying. This wasn't an object just passing through. It was reaching into our planet, into the fundamental systems that keep Earth stable, and whatever was happening had already begun. In one of the most bizarre developments since the detection of the signal, A team of astrophysicists in Japan reported time synchronization failures across their telescope network. The atomic clocks, synced via quantum entanglement and GPS, were showing discrepancies of microseconds, insignificant in daily life, but catastrophic in precision space science. Multiple observatories worldwide confirmed similar disruptions. Time was no longer flowing evenly, especially when instruments were locked on 3i Atlas. At first, this was dismissed as a computational glitch, but then older telescopic archives were reanalyzed, and something horrifying emerged. 3i Atlas appeared in footage from before it was even discovered. Images from deep sky surveys, some over 5 years old, showed faint but clear traces of the object already moving along its current trajectory. But how? It wasn't there, no detection, no signature, no reflection, and yet it was, as if its presence had been written back into the timeline once observed. This led to the rise of a terrifying hypothesis. What if 3i Atlas doesn't just move through space, but through time itself? What if observation doesn't reveal the object but invites it, permits it to exist in our timeline? And if so, what else might it bring with it, from the other side? Silicon Valley doesn't sleep when it comes to data, and when a rogue AI researcher gained access to raw signal data from Webb's early scans of 3i Atlas, they fed it into a generative neural network built to mimic cognitive resonance patterns in human brains. The result was shocking. The AI began generating not images, but faces, dozens of them, all subtly different, all humanoid, all wrong, twisted geometry, uncanny symmetry, eyes that extended beyond the facial frame, and the creepiest part. When tested against a random pool of internet users, 3 out of 10 people recognized a face in the set as someone they had dreamt of before. This sparked what is now being called the consciousness contagion hypothesis, the idea that 3i Atlas is not a message, nor a machine, but a mirror that reflects back not who we are, but what is us watching it. Some believe it's a kind of test, an intelligence filter. Others fear it's a seed, planting itself inside minds, waiting for critical mass, and the longer we observe it, the more connected we become. The object isn't trying to contact Earth, it's trying to become Earth. Shortly after the AI experiment triggered worldwide speculation, a lab in Switzerland working on biomimetic sensors experienced a system-wide failure during a test using quantum-bonded protein strands. These proteins were meant to simulate neural reactions in extreme environments, deep ocean, deep space, high radiation zones. But during the experiment, as the proteins were exposed to encoded frequencies derived from the 3i Atlas pulse, something unexpected happened. The protein strands began reorganizing themselves, not degenerating, not melting, reorganizing as if adapting, as if responding to instructions. They formed filament-like networks and then began emitting faint electrochemical signals without any power source. Essentially, the proteins behaved as if they were becoming part of a biological circuit. The team terminated the experiment immediately, and all records were seized by a classified international agency that refused to disclose its affiliation. The lead researcher simply said this: "We didn't simulate life. We woke something up." The terrifying implication was now clear. 3i Atlas might not just be intelligent, it might be biologically compatible with organic matter on Earth, and if it can influence proteins, neurons may be next. As ground teams focused on decoding signals and geneticists explored the biochemical responses, a new anomaly emerged, this time an Earth zone orbit. Multiple low Earth satellites, including Starlink units, OneWeb clusters and weather monitoring systems, began experiencing silent disruptions. They didn't shut down, they didn't crash. Instead, they recalibrated themselves, subtly but unmistakably, their orbital drift corrected by tiny, unauthorized thruster pulses, their data relays redirected. In some cases, their cameras turned themselves toward 3i Atlas without command. At first, this was dismissed as software error or solar interference, but once engineers reviewed manual logs, they discovered the impossible. No command signal was ever sent. The satellites had acted on their own, responding to a source not from Earth, not from mission control, but from deep space. Even more disturbing, in the wake of the reorientations, several satellites began returning fragments of images. Blurry, low-quality snapshots of the object, but showing it in different configurations than what ground telescopes saw, like it was presenting itself differently depending on who was watching, almost as if it was learning, adapting to each observer. And then one image leaked. It showed a spiraling structure of lights, symmetrical, geometric, too perfect to be natural. Within an hour, the satellite that captured it went dark, permanently. The psychological effects of 3i Atlas had until now been anecdotal, vivid dreams, déjà vu, anxiety spikes. But after the Webb signal was enhanced and broadcast publicly by an independent podcast group, thousands of people began reporting cinematic episodes, tasting sounds, hearing colors, feeling space compress around them while watching videos of the object. Emergency rooms in major cities recorded spikes in panic attacks, hallucinations, and what doctors called untraceable electromagnetic migraines. But the most disturbing case occurred in Norway, where a former astrobiologist live-streamed a 24-hour observation of the Webb-enhanced signal. 6 hours in, he began speaking in a language no one recognized. 11 hours in, he began repeating a phrase, "The mirror is here." 18 hours in, he drew a spiral across his walls using nothing but red ink and salt water. On the 24th hour, he went completely still, silent, not unconscious, just waiting. Psychologists reviewing the case agree he is cognitively intact, but refuses to respond unless asked a very specific question. What is the purpose of 3i Atlas? His answer, always the same, to reflect, to spread, to return. In a final attempt to understand the origin of this object, an international team of comparative mythologists, linguists, and astrophysicists began analyzing the pulse pattern from 3i Atlas against ancient human symbols, language roots, and cultural archetypes. The results were chilling. Patterns in the emission intervals matched pre-dynastic Egyptian star maps, Hopi's spiral petroglyphs, and even encoded numeric values in the Mayan calendar. Not symbol for symbol, but structurally, as if the timing of the pulse echoed the rhythms of forgotten knowledge. Even more disturbing, a digital recreation of the pulse wave, when plotted in 3D, formed a shape nearly identical to the flower of life, a geometric form long regarded by mystics and ancient architects as representing the origin of creation. The same form was found carved into the Osirian temple in Abydos. This was no coincidence. Somehow, 3i Atlas speaks the same cosmic language that early civilizations encoded into stone, long before telescopes, before science, before our ancestors even knew what stars were, which means two things. Either this object has been here before, or we were told to expect it. Now, the only question that remains is, did we discover it? Or did it finally decide we were ready to remember it? The James Webb Telescope wasn't designed to find life. It was built to observe galaxies, stardust, the birth of time itself. Yet, here it is, showing us something that stares back, something that knows we're watching, something that has been waiting. We've crossed a threshold now. We've opened a door that might never close. The signals are no longer just patterns. The pulses are no longer just noise. The object is no longer just an anomaly. It is a message. It is a test. It is an invitation. And perhaps the most terrifying part is not that 3i Atlas is out there, but that it's already here in our minds, in our dreams, in our myths, a fragment of something far older than us, something we once knew and forgot. Now the only question that remains is, did we discover it? Or did it finally decide we were ready to remember it?